If you cannot win an argument, you make the argument last forever. Step 1. In the winter of 1953, at the Plaza Hotel, with the New York street below cold and going dark, the man who speaks for American Tobacco goes up to the suite. Philip Morris is already there, and Reynolds and Lorard, the big six. A study has just tied smoking to tumors, and cigarette sales are falling for the first time. So the six of them take one table and lay their own secret research in the middle of it, because the danger is no longer the science but each other. The first company to admit anything leaves the other five looking deadly, so what they sign is not a truce but a committee, one voice that denies every risk on behalf of all of them. Where six competitors stood, there is now a single wall. Competitors stood, competing to survive. Step 2. A year later, in 1954, the same men come back, bringing a public relations firm called Hill and Knowlton, which builds them a committee nobody could object to by name. The word is neutral on the letterhead, scientific in the stack of paper on the desk, and honest on the man buttoning a white coat over his suit. $10 million goes into it, paying for real work at famous universities and quiet labs, so that what the public reads is a search and what it watches on television is progress. The committee keeps one thing for itself, the stamp. A result that comes back wrong goes into a drawer, not a journal, and the research is there to serve the face on the billboard. Science becomes a tool for public relations. Step 3. Next, they buy the space instead of the science. A full page in 448 newspapers, read by 43 million people, and called a frank statement. It borrows the voice of the laboratory, puts health first in its opening line, and admits, in the same paragraph, that the facts are still missing. What the public reads is the large print, what it believes is the pledge underneath, and the pledge is signed once, then twice, then by all six. They already know the link is real, so they hand it 3 words instead: theory, guess, debate, and the press carries them to the newsstand, while the science they contradict stays behind a locked door. A printed promise passes for evidence. Step 4. The trouble is, the science keeps arriving at the cigarette, so the industry offers its millions somewhere else, to a university official who needs the money, and it is taken, with the agenda attached. The grants go to genetics, to pollution, to stress, 3 new culprits on a chalkboard, and not one of them growing in a field of tobacco. Any result pointing the wrong way is stamped and shelved. Independent funding dries up, and they end up owning the lab, the microscope, and the report. 10 years go by like that, and by 1964, the disease is still officially a mystery. It could be the schmog, it could be the genes, it could be the neens, it could be the genes, it could be the anything. Funding decides which questions get asked. Step 5. By the 1960s, there's a television in the living room and a newspaper on the porch, and both of them keep a rule they call equal time. On one side of the split screen sit the journals, 99 scientists in every 100, and a lung that tobacco has already finished with. On the other side, there is one man in a good suit, carrying a leather briefcase, lit brightly enough to look official, saying the science is inconclusive and more research is needed. The folders he brought with him are empty, the broadcast reaches millions anyway, and a settled question begins to look like a coin landing either way. Fairness obliges the press to carry the lie. Step 6. Then the Surgeon General publishes, with 7,000 studies behind him, and a mortality curve that only goes one way. The industry does not deny the number, it raises the bar. It asks for a mechanism, for absolute biological proof, for a smoking gun inside the cell. In the Senate, they testify, praising what they call sound science, mocking what they call junk science, and putting a red cross through the government's own experts. Regulation stops in front of a clock with no hands, and the delay runs 40 years, 100 million people long. Correlation, they keep explaining, is not causation. Numbers are only ever suggestions, and the threshold a study must clear quietly moves upward. Statistics stop counting as proof. Step 7. By 1993, the same method has a lobbying arm, a coalition that calls itself Sound Science, and a target. the agency that writes the health rules. What it attacks is not a finding, but the data underneath it. Under a standard it calls data integrity, which sounds like a virtue and works like a door. Every study must now be perfect. Any flaw at all is enough to stop a law, and the industry drafts the wording of the rule itself. Then come the lawsuits, against the warning on the packet, against every rule itself. Then come the lawsuits against the warning on the packet, against the clock, against every rule, until the truth is stacked in boxes and the delay is the product coming off the belt. Industry writes the rules, evidence must meet. Step 8. The first suits arrive with a death certificate attached, a family on one side of the table, and a company lawyer at the podium opposite. His argument is not that cigarettes are safe, only that the question is still open, and that the man on the easel made a free choice. He had read the warnings, he knew the risk, and he signed for it. Personal responsibility and a column of zeros where the payouts go. For 40 years it works. The money stays in the vault, the judge nods along, and the burden ends on the man holding the packet. The dead are held responsible for dying. Step 9. In 1994, one of their own decides to say it aloud, that the nicotine is the whole point, that the addiction is designed and the denials are written. He talks to a reporter, and the company sits him down across a glass table with a contract, a severance, and a choice. He signs where the pen is pointing, and the silence is priced at $500,000. When he tries to break it anyway, the legal team arrives, and what it threatens is the house, the family, and the rest of his working life. The balance goes to zero, and the truth stays behind a steel door. Silence has a price, and it gets paid. Step 10. In 1998, the bill finally arrives. 46 states suing at the same time for the healthcare, the damage, and the lying. The industry signs, pays $206 billion, and the money travels out to the states, buying, along with a signature, a kind of quiet. In return, the companies get immunity. No state may bring this again, and the book closes on the shelf. Part of the price is disclosure, and in the released memos one line is highlighted. Doubt is the product. The roadmap is public now, and it changes nothing. Immunity is something money can buy. Step 11. By 2003, the name itself is the liability. So Philip Morris becomes Altria, a word with no history in it, and a hallway with fruit in the bowl. The new officials speak of harm reduction, of a smoke-free world, and they buy the shelf of devices that leads out of the habit. Above the door it says exit. The same man calls the device a tool for wellness, and the profits reach $90 billion. The money goes into laboratories with glass walls, studying clean air, nicotine delivery, consumer habit, and the man who sold the harm is the one holding the compass. The poisoner is now the doctor. Step 12. The logo goes up. The leaf is held out like a promise. The shelf fills with small electronic devices, and the crowd walks past the hoarding without reading it. Other boardrooms took one thing from all of this: the method. The same firms, shaking the same hands, and a settled question put back on television as a debate. The grants go to natural cycles, to volcanic ash, to cloud cover, while another industry pours a pesticide and asks for certainty. Independent work is junk, their own is sound, and the roadmap is on the table. The method outlives the product. The phrase they invented for it, sound science, is still spoken as a compliment, and the argument they started in 1953 is still running.